Hello and welcome. It's so wonderful to be here with all of you today. I'm so delighted to see so many people interested in learning about neuroplasticity and the potential it holds for real lasting healing. So, as I said, I'm Dr. Liz Nicki. I'm a family doctor who became completely bedbound on home oxygen with chronic fatigue syndrome, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, fibromyalgia, central sensitivity syndromes, mast cell activation syndrome, autoimmune disease, anxiety, and many, many more. I had all the things that you guys have. Through the principles of neuroplasticity, I was able to retrain my brain and body, and I went from being bedbound to running, ultimately achieving remission. In this talk, I want to introduce you to what neuroplasticity is, walk you through two of the leading brain retraining programs, and along the way, share my personal recovery story, which I think can be really helpful for people. My hope is to inspire you, to help you see that the brain can change and that healing is possible. If anyone is having trouble hearing me, please maybe give me a hand gesture. So this is an overview of my story from physician to patient and then back again to physician. So presently, I'm delighted to say I'm practicing as a family doc. I'm based in Vancouver. I live with my wonderful son Avery, and I love swimming in the ocean every single day, rain or shine. But my path to this point has been very unusual, anything but typical. After years of working as a family doctor, I developed all the illnesses I just described, and I went from caring for patients to being a patient myself, navigating a maze of symptoms, uncertainty, and exhaustion. Everything changed when I discovered neuroplasticity programs. I completed the DNRS or Dynamic Neural Retraining System in 2019, and I had a fairly rapid recovery. In 2023, I completed the Primal Trust program, which brought me into further remission. The changes I experienced were profound physical, emotional, and mental changes. By 2025, I felt ready to return to medicine, this time with a renewed sense of purpose and confidence in my ability to stay healthy. And just 11 weeks ago, I came full circle. I began a mentorship with Dr. Rick Arsenault, and he had once supervised me many years ago during my residency at St. Paul's Hospital. Combining my lived experience with my medical training allows me to help patients facing these chronic complex conditions. And I'm really passionate about empowering others with the science and tools that help me reclaim my life. So, you guys know I like to promote cold plunging. This slide shows two photos that capture a really powerful moment for me. On the left, you see me with two fellow cold dippers. It's a very windy February day in New Brunswick of this year, and we're bundled up and we're carving out a small little 4x6 space in the thick frozen lake. It was minus 10 degrees. The wind was howling, very intense day. And on the right, you'll see the three of us in that icy little hole dipping in the freezing water, laughing, buzzing with energy, and feeling truly alive. This moment was meaningful not only because it was exhilarating and it was awesome, but it represents how far I've come. So just a few years ago, I was mostly bedbound, struggling to imagine how I'd ever reclaim my life. And here I was doing something that once felt impossible. As a family doctor who has walked a long road of recovery, this moment captures more than just vitality. It's a celebration of resilience, neuroplastic healing, and the vibrant life that can return after a chronic illness. My story begins in 2007 when I was thriving. I was super healthy. I was running marathons. I was traveling often. I was working as a director of student health at Langara in Vancouver. I was really living a really happy, joy-filled life. But in 2008, everything began to shift for me, and I had a cascade of stressors. I had work overload, financial pressure, health challenges, personal loss, And I just got worn down and I tried to push through, as many of you do, until my body simply could not keep up. I got profoundly fatigued and eventually I just couldn't get out of bed. I was forced to take a medical leave from the career that I loved. And what followed were years of being severely unwell. I cycled through the medical system, desperately searching for answers. It was not until a full decade later, 2018, that I was finally diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, POTS, fibromyalgia, MCAS, and many central sensitivity syndromes. These labels gave context to my experience, but they also marked the beginning of a different kind of journey, one that up until then had really been defined by a lot of loss and suffering. So I think it's helpful just to see that others have your symptoms. So here's a list of some of my symptoms. So over the years, my health picture became increasingly complex. I experienced a wide range of debilitating symptoms that affected almost every system in my body. In addition to the ones I previously mentioned, I also had migraines, myofascial pain syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, persistent shortness of breath, disordered sleep, anxiety, and mitochondrial myopathy proven by biopsy. There were frequent infections, episodes of chronic dizziness, paresthesias or numbness and tingling, and I had pretty troubling visual disturbances. The symptoms were so overwhelming that I often found myself in the emergency room looking for relief. My days were shaped by fear, uncertainty, just trying to manage this constellation of symptoms, and it became a full-time effort. Each new diagnosis brought more suffering, and the root cause of my illness and a clear path forward remained elusive. So if you're living with these similar challenges, I'm sure much of this sounds pretty familiar. You too have probably experienced the confusion, the exhaustion, the all too familiar gaslighting, the frustration that comes with these invisible conditions. I want you to know you're not alone. There is a way to recover. It might not look like what you first imagined, but healing is absolutely possible. So during the most difficult years of my illness, I pursued every possible avenue. Like many of you, I saw so many specialists. I saw internists, so not just one, but a few. I saw rheumatologists, I saw neurologists, immunodermatologist, a cardiologist, a psychiatrist. I even went to the Mayo Clinic on the East Coast twice. I also sought care through integrative approaches, including naturopathy, acupuncture, functional medicine. I was a determined advocate for my health. I was hoping that somewhere I would find healing and clarity. The investigations were extensive and exhausting. I had countless rounds of blood work, CT scans, MRIs, pulmonary function tests, and I had both painful, very painful muscle and nerve biopsies. The effort was relentless. It was costly. I spent over $100,000. Yet, despite this enormous investment of time, energy, and resources, I was no closer to recovery. I still had no clear roadmap, and the deeper I went into the system, the more hopeless things seemed. It was really disheartening. Every test came back either normal, inconclusive, or abnormal, but for no known reason, and it felt like another dead end. I was living with real life-altering symptoms, and I didn't have any clear explanation or effective treatment. The constant searching, the emotional toll, and the sense of invisibility were overwhelming, and at times I felt truly hopeless, as I'm sure many of you guys have too. After so many years of searching for answers through conventional and integrative medicine, I came across something that at first felt to me entirely counterintuitive: brain retraining. My initial reaction was, this is probably the stupidest thing I've ever done. I was a physician trained in evidence-based medicine. The idea that rewiring my brain could impact physical symptoms seemed completely absurd. In 2019, out of sheer desperation, I felt like I had nothing to lose by this point. I enrolled in the DNRS course, and to my complete surprise, within 1 week, I went from being mostly bedbound, on home oxygen, to walking and no longer using the oxygen. Over the following months, my energy returned, my symptoms began to resolve, and I gradually resumed many of my activities. And by 1 year, most of my symptoms were either totally gone or significantly improved. As I approached the idea of returning to work, I realized I needed a more comprehensive toolkit, something that would support not just symptom relief, but deeper nervous system regulation. And that's where the Primal Trust program comes in. In 2023, I started this program and I had further recovery, refining my capacity for nervous system regulation and building the confidence to reintegrate into professional life. I'm so proud in 2025, after 17 years away from clinical practice, to say that I've returned to work. I'm working under Dr. Rick Arsenault, doing a mentorship, and it's a milestone that I once thought was totally impossible. I truly never thought I would work again. This photo really captures my recovery. So for those of you from the Lower Mainland, this is the Chief, and it's in Squamish, and it's fairly uphill hike, takes over an hour, and I was able to easily do it with my family and friends. And this is again is an experience that I never thought I would do again. I really just hoped I would get to live to watch my son graduate. I never thought I'd go back to work, and I definitely never thought I'd hike the Chief again. But this isn't just my story. I want it to be a roadmap for you guys. I'm not a medical miracle. Thousands have used neuroplasticity to get into remission, and I'm just one of many who learned how to work with my brain and body. And what I discovered is this: when we understand how the brain influences our symptoms, everything changes. So if you're feeling stuck, skeptical, scared, I get it. I was there. I want you to know, though, recovery isn't just possible, it's probable when you give your brain the right input and support. The science behind neuroplasticity is real, the tools are learnable, and your story can change just like mine did. So, what is neuroplasticity? So, this is just a cute little slide that represents the heart of neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to change, adapt, and heal throughout life. We used to think the brain stopped developing in our early 20s, but we now know that's totally not true. Brains are dynamic and responsive, and just as muscles grow stronger with use, our neural pathways rewire and reshape based on where we place our attention, how we respond to stress, and the patterns we reinforce daily. So when we talk about grow every day, we're referring to this incredible capacity, and every small practice, whether it's calming your system, shifting a thought pattern, engaging in joy, gently nudges your brain towards greater regulation, which will bring you back to health. Neuroplasticity gives us the hope and the science behind recovery, especially from conditions like ours that were once considered uncurable. So to talk a little bit more about neuroplasticity, it's the brain's natural ability to rewire itself by forming new connections and pathways in response to our experiences, thoughts, and behaviors. It's been used successfully for decades in stroke rehab and recovery from nerve injuries like in vestibular disorders. So in these cases, patients practice specific movements or exercises to help the brain relearn how to function, proving that with the right input, the brain can adapt and heal. What is very exciting for you guys is that over the past 6 years, research has started to confirm what many people living with complex chronic conditions like myself, and probably some of you have discovered firsthand. These same neuroplastic principles help people recover. They help you recover from chronic fatigue, from fibromyalgia, from post-viral syndrome, from POTS, from MCAS, from chronic pain, from mold toxicity, and many, many more. There are now several studies supporting the use of brain retraining to promote real, measurable improvement, improve quality of life, symptom resolution, and remission. Neuroplasticity-based programs work by helping to rewire the limbic system, which is the part of the brain that gets stuck in a chronic fight or flight stress response. When the brain is constantly signaling danger, the body remains in survival mode, making healing very difficult. Brain retraining shifts the state, guiding the nervous system from fight or flight into rest and repair. Neuroplasticity is not about forcing or thinking your way out of illness. It's about consistent, gentle daily practices that send new signals of safety, helping the brain and body reconnect to a more regulated healing state. With time and the right tools, thousands of people, including myself, have found significant life-changing recovery using this approach. So this is just a cute little slide helping to demonstrate the theory behind nervous system dysregulation leading to these complex chronic diseases. So we see a child caught in the fight, the flight, or the freeze states. So these are the brain's natural response to perceived danger. When the brain senses a threat, it will send powerful signals throughout the nervous system to either defend itself, so fight, or run away, flight, or shut down, freeze. And there's a fourth one now, which we call fawn, so people please. In complex chronic conditions, the brain gets stuck in that stress response, even when there's no danger. And it's this constant state of alarm that leads to limbic system dysfunction, overactivation of glial cells in the brain, and we get neuroinflammation. This can drive a wide range of symptoms: fatigue, pain, brain fog, anxiety, dizziness, digestive problems, all the things you are more than familiar with. So understanding this helps explain why calming the brain and nervous system is such a key part to recover. Through neuroplasticity, we help the brain feel safe again. So we're shifting out of the survival mode of fight, flight, or freeze, and we're getting into the healing mode. And when we start to calm the limbic system with neuroplasticity, your symptoms will just start to fall away. So what is the limbic system? This is just a little schematic showing the brain. And in the middle is the limbic system, which is a network of interconnected structures. They're deep in the brain and they play a central role in emotional processing, memory, and the body's response to stress and threat. So we have the amygdala. This is called the brain's alarm center. It initiates the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We've got the hippocampus, involved in memory and learning, distinguishes between past and present experiences. The thalamus, it relays information, and then the hypothalamus, which helps regulate critical body functions like heart rate, temperature, and hormones through its connection to the autonomic nervous system. So this one, a lot of you will know, is very important because a lot of you have autonomic dysfunction, sweatiness, tachycardia. That's all related to dysfunction of the hypothalamus. So in people with our complex chronic conditions, this limbic system has become hypersensitive. It's become overactive, and it's essentially stuck in a chronic stress state. And again, this ongoing activation leads to so many of the symptoms. Neuroplasticity-based therapies help retrain the limbic system, gradually calming the amygdala and rewiring the brain's stress response. This shift allows the nervous system to move from surviving into healing, what we call the rest and repair, and that's essential for recovery. So why does neuroplasticity work? So chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, and related conditions are now increasingly understood as dysfunctions in the brain and nervous system, particularly in how the brain perceives and responds to stress, danger, and environmental input. Many researchers now believe these conditions are triggered by an initial injury to the brain, so often from one or more environmental stressors, such as a viral infection like COVID or another virus, chemical exposure, physical or emotional stress or trauma. These events disrupt the normal regulation of the brain and immune pathways. One of the key players in this response is glial cell activation in the brain. These are the cells that support and protect neurons, but when overactivated, they contribute to neuroinflammation. And it's this neuroinflammation that leads to dysfunction of the limbic system, and the hypothalamus releases a chemical called corticotropin releasing factor, which sets off a chain reaction through both the neural and hormonal systems involving the hypothalamic pituitary axis. So it activates the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight, It stimulates mast cells, which release pro-inflammatory chemicals. And this ongoing activation creates a vicious cycle of inflammation and dysregulation throughout the brain and body, leading to many of the hallmark systems or symptoms. This is where neuroplasticity comes in. So neuroplastic approaches work by helping the brain recognize it is no longer under threat. Through consistent structured practice, these tools calm the limbic system, reduce hypothalamic overactivation, and help reset the nervous system from fight or flight to a state of rest and repair. And over time, this leads to decreased inflammation, a regulated immune system, and a significant reduction or remission of symptoms. So in short, neuroplasticity supports healing by interrupting the cycle of chronic stress and inflammation at its source, the brain. This gives the nervous system the chance to rewire towards health. So just to give you a little diagram of what I was mentioning. So up here, well, first of all, this is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And up here we have the hypothalamus. It detects stress, whether from illness or emotional or physical stressors, and it sends out a signal, corticotropin releasing hormone, CRH. This then travels down to the pituitary gland, which then releases adrenocorticotropic hormone or ACTH. This then goes to the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys, and then they release cortisol, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. And these hormones help the body respond to stress by increasing alertness, raising blood pressure, mobilizing energy stores, and reducing non-essential functions like digestion or deep rest. In chronic illness, though, this system, so this whole system, it gets hypersensitive and overactive. And it's in a dysregulated state, leading to a constant on state. So there's a vicious cycle contributing to fatigue, anxiety, and many other inflammatory conditions. That's why calming this axis through neuroplasticity and restoring balance is such an important part of recovery from many of our complex chronic diseases. And just to mention one more thing, the CRH also stimulates mast cells, which then release also some pro-inflammatory cytokines, further leading to more symptoms. And that's where we get our MCAS from. So looking at all the different systems that are affected in this diagram. So when the brain and body are exposed to a stressor and we shift into this chronic overactivation, the glial cells, so the cells in the brain, these are the immune-like cells, they become overactive and they start releasing cytokines. These are inflammatory messengers that are contributing to neuroinflammation. And it's this persistent inflammation that's leading to hypothalamic dysfunction, activation of the immune system throughout the body, keeping it on high alert and disrupting normal healing processes. At the same time, we get gut dysbiosis or imbalance of your microbiome in your gut, and this can fuel further immune activation and nervous system stress. It also leads to autonomic nervous system imbalance. So we're getting now more sympathetic and less parasympathetic. And this is going to affect heart rate, blood pressure, digestion. So you'll have symptoms like POTS, dizziness, digestive issues, temperature sensitivity. And finally, a very common one for a lot of you is pain. So this state amplifies pain signals in the nervous system. It makes the body more sensitive to touch, to movement, to internal sensations. It's a hallmark of central sensitization, which, like I said, probably I would say most of you here have. So all of these processes together create a self-reinforcing cycle that drives many of the symptoms patients experience daily. But the hopeful part is that these processes are not fixed. With the right tools, brain retraining, nervous system regulation, and lifestyle support, including medications like those that we use at Dr. Rick's clinic, we can help the body and brain return to a more balanced state. Healing is absolutely possible even after years of illness. So I really like this image. I think it really captures in a really simple way what's happening. So if we look here, the black domino at the top represents limbic system overactivation and neuroinflammation in the brain. So the glial cells are also overactive and inflamed. This sets off a chain reaction of downstream symptoms and conditions. So here's your brain, and then this could be POTS, this might be MCAS, this might be fibromyalgia, this might be chronic fatigue, all the different things, multiple chemical sensitivities. So these are all the downstream effects, but they're all coming, we now think, from one upstream effect, which is our brain. So neuroplasticity-based therapies, we use them to gently calm and rewire the brain to reduce the stress response. And so we're targeting that root cause, that first domino, rather than just managing the symptoms as represented in these chains. That said, though, I do think brain retraining, along with supportive medications or therapies, together can be very helpful. They create stability and comfort while the brain gradually learns a more regulated pattern. It's much easier to practice neuroplasticity. So up here in the brain, much easier to do this when you feel better. So if you can treat a lot of these and reduce the symptoms, then your neuroplasticity program will be a lot more successful. So I wanted to speak very briefly about the gaslighting that happens with these conditions because it's still happening. It's really unfortunate. So for years, people with conditions like ours have been told it's all in our head. And the truth is, it is in our head, but only because these illnesses involve real physical changes in the brain, the limbic system, and the nervous system. These structures get stuck in a state of overdrive, sending constant danger signals to the body and causing widespread symptoms. And this is a story we've seen before. So decades ago, multiple sclerosis was dismissed as imaginary until the MRI was invented in the late 1970s, and it revealed clear lesions in the brain of MS patients. So science caught up, the belief followed, and treatment transformed the lives of these people. We're at a similar turning point for these complex chronic diseases. While we don't yet have one single definitive tool, advanced tools like PET scans and functional MRI show measurable brain changes. Specialized blood work reveals immune system abnormalities, mast cell activation indicators, HPA axis dysregulation, neurotransmitter abnormalities, and many, many more. The problem, though, is that these tests are not widely available, nor are they sensitive or specific enough for diagnosing these conditions. But the good news is that although we have not yet found a definitive marker, we have found research-backed evidence from neuroplasticity studies. So these are scientifically proven approaches that retrain the brain and nervous system, leading many patients to remission of these conditions. But I just want to reiterate, these illnesses are real and they're physical. And we may not yet have one simple test that defines them all, but we do have undeniable proof of biological dysfunction, and we're growing a body of research that shows recovery is possible using neuroplasticity. So here's the picture I like that shows where we want our nervous system to be. And neuroplasticity will allow your brain to rewire, to recover. When you're in this calm, relaxed state, you're showing your body safety, and the nervous system will begin to shift. This is where healing happens. And we can heal using self-directed online neuroplasticity programs. Since 2007, there are at least 10 online programs, probably a lot more, but I found 10 prominent ones that have been developed to harness the power of neuroplasticity. The Gupta program and DNRS were the first. More recently, Primal Trust and other wellness-based approaches began around 2018. They differ in style, but they're all built on the same core principle, using brain retraining to calm the stress response. By calming the limbic system and reducing inflammation, we help the body shift back into the parasympathetic state, and we create the conditions for true recovery. Although I haven't yet completed the Gupta program, I wanted to briefly talk about it today. It's a neuroplasticity-based recovery program for chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, MCAS, POTS, all the things. The reason I wanted to mention it is because it has 4 published research trials that show significant improvement in symptoms and quality of life, and because of a new addition to the program called AI ASH Talk. So while the other programs don't have published studies aside from a preliminary one from DNRS, I do believe the results would be the same for them all because they're all based on the same core principles. And I have personally met hundreds of brain retrainers who had life-changing results with both DNRS and Primal Trust. So Dr. Ashtok Gupta recently added what he calls AI Ashtok. And last week I had the chance to try it out during a Zoom call with him. And I was really impressed. So I was able to have a very detailed conversation with AI Ashtok. And I asked him questions about returning to work. How would he advise me? What would my neuroplasticity program look like around that? And his answers were exactly what I've learned through years of research and training in neuroplasticity. So I think for people who can't afford regular mentoring or coaching, this AI tool alone might make this program a really good choice for you. And I'm planning to do this program, and once I do it, I'll give you an update on the program. But for today, let's continue on the 2 that I do know. And we'll start with the first one I did in, I think it was 2019, DNRS. So it stands for Dynamic Neural Retraining System. It welcomes visitors with a hopeful message. Are you ready to retrain your brain, transform your health, and reclaim your life? And I do think that's true. That's a hopeful message, and it's a message that rings true for many people who do the program. So it's a warm and empowering invitation to begin a healing journey through neuroplasticity. The site clearly outlines how the program uses science-backed brain retraining techniques to support recovery from chronic conditions. I personally had profound improvements with DNRS, and I can say this approach helped me with 95% of my recovery. So DNRS is, as I said, a structured brain retraining program. It was created by counselor Annie Hopper to address our complex chronic conditions. She developed it after her own life was profoundly impacted by severe multiple chemical sensitivity and fibromyalgia. She was actually so sensitive to everything, including electricity, that she was living on a houseboat all by herself with no electricity while she developed this program. So she's a very impressive and inspiring woman. So drawing from neuroscience and her own personal experience, she built this program based on the principle that these conditions stem from a dysregulated limbic system. The approach involves rewiring the brain by replacing the maladaptive neural pathways with healthier, more regulated ones. And there are 5 key pillars. So the first, awareness. Second is pattern interrupt. Third, visualizations. Fourth, elevating your emotional states. And fifth, incremental training. These pillars work together to reduce the fight or flight response, and they help bring your body into healing. I began this program from my bed, and to my amazement, within a week, I was walking. And over the course of a year using the program, especially for me, the core rounds exercises, I saw consistent improvements. And I can say after a year, I was running, hiking, driving 2 hours a day to get my kid to school, and I had no significant limitations, and I really did feel well. My experience isn't unique. A study from McMaster reflects similar outcomes. DNRS offers real hope for those navigating our chronic conditions. It's practical, it's accessible, and it's rooted in the science of neuroplasticity. So here's just a little slide of the DNRS study. It never got published. Dr. Gunter out of McMaster did this study, I think in maybe 2017. And there were 102 patients, and he looked at 5 conditions. So he looked at fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, anxiety, depression, and multiple chemical sensitivity. So Annie had this one, fibromyalgia, and she had multiple chemical sensitivity. And it's a bar graph showing the initial, so at baseline when people started is on the left, all these on the left, and then on the right is a 12-month mark after doing the DNRS for 12 months. So I think this is actually very impressive. So for fibromyalgia, starting off, 77% of people had it. By 12 months, we had a majority of recovery. So only 27% of people had fibromyalgia. And I suspect even in that bunch, their symptoms were reduced. They probably still met the criteria, but they probably felt better. Chronic fatigue, similarly, it went from 72% down to 29%. Very impressive at 12 months. Anxiety, 48% to 6%. Depression, 47 to 13. Multiple chemical sensitivity, 39 to 6. So each category is really showing quite a striking, significant improvement. So the majority of the patients who consistently practiced experienced complete or near complete resolution of their symptoms. So it's a very compelling highlight showing the potential of neuroplasticity-based brain retraining to create real and lasting healing. So the details of DNRS, it's self-paced, so you can do it totally in your own time. It's a 12-hour online video course. The thing to really note, it's a top-down, so it means it's very much a cognitive program. It targets the brain's limbic system to shift patterns that contribute to chronic illness, but again, using cognitive programming. So participants are encouraged to engage in daily brain retraining visualization called rounds. So for at least 1 hour a day, you're encouraged to use scripted language, specific body movements, and guided visualization. And I will say this was my main tool. I followed this core practice along with the incremental training consistently every single day for that year. And I still do it actually. Additional support options include one-to-one coaching. I did this, I found it helpful, but you do have to pay for it. I also did a 12-week small group coaching, again, optional. I found it helpful, but I did have to pay for it. It does have a lifelong community forum for peer support, which is somewhat limited, I found, in its support. It has a free 7-day trial, which is great. It costs $350, and it includes a money-back guarantee for the first year. As I mentioned earlier, most people start noticing improvements within days or weeks, with the most significant gains typically seen over the first year of consistent practice. And in my case, I experienced steady, life-changing recovery over 12 months. So although DNRS was profoundly effective for me, it does just focus on cognitive retraining, top down. It does not address somatic or emotional layers, which are what we call the bottom up. So I chose to complement my healing by enrolling in Primal Trust in 2023 for a more comprehensive approach. And this is the webpage for Primal Trust. So it welcomes visitors with a message of empowerment, of hope. It's highlighting the global reach. So that's a pretty good amount of people enrolled, 13,500. It's been in the business for 7 years, so it's been there for a while. And I know the founder, Dr. Kat King, was coaching people before that. It has 550 practitioner recommendations, which is pretty awesome. And it's present in over 60 countries. And their mission is to empower people worldwide to reclaim their health through the science of nervous system regulation and somatic healing. The site describes a nurturing, supportive community focused on helping individuals self-heal from conditions often labeled as incurable, with an emphasis on mastering the nervous system. It opens the door to profound wellness transformation, and their invitation is very simple and inspiring, like DNRS. Join us and discover your innate healing potential. So, Primal Trust, very comprehensive program created by Dr. Kathleen King. She, like me, was bedbound and really ill for 20 years. She had chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, Lyme disease, mold illness, severe trauma. She had severe panic disorder, having panic attacks daily. And through her own journey of healing, she discovered full remission was possible. And she went on to develop Primal Trust to help others do the same. She is trained as a physiotherapist, so she knew a lot of these somatic exercises from when she used to work as a physio. The program is based on the understanding, again, that these chronic illnesses stem from autonomic nervous system dysregulation. The body has gotten stuck in patterns of fight, flight, or freeze. This one, again, combines top-down retraining tools like visualization, mindset work, but it also includes a very deeply supportive bottom-up approach. And this includes somatic practices, so body practices, breath work, and vagus nerve regulation techniques. This integrative method helps people rewire their brain and bodies toward safety, connection, and healing. So when I was preparing to return to work, I did not trust myself not to get into trouble again. And so I turned towards Primal Trust in 2023, and it was exactly what I needed. I had made great progress with DNRS, but I found its primary tool of rounds just wasn't practical to sustain during a busy workday. And the Primal Trust really gave me so many tools to stay regulated while working. And I do credit Primal Trust as a key part of my ability to return to work. So a few of the details about Primal Trust. Again, it's self-paced, just like the DNRS and the Gupta programs. And again, it's combining nervous system regulation, but this one adds parts work, identity rewiring, and it's structured into 3 progressive levels. Level 1 is called Regulate, and this is really learning core tools for calming your nervous system. For many people, this level alone will be transformative, and you can stop right there. Level 2 is Integrate. This is parts work. It's you're exploring your identity patterns, you're deepening your self-awareness, and your emotional healing. So this level is very good if you've had trauma in your life. Level 3, which is actually the level I'm presently in, is called Liberate, and it's offering advanced practices for people further along in their journey, wanting deeper personal growth, deeper nervous system regulation, and resilience. So participants engage with the program in any way that suits your needs. So you can do all 3 levels, you can just do the first. There is optional one-to-one coaching. There is group coaching, and there's free weekly integration classes that review each module as you go through the levels. I used all of these options and I found them all really valuable in my experience. So you're doing a daily 1-hour practice of pattern interrupt, visualization, breath work, and somatic work. There is a very large video library, at least 100 topics. All of them I find super interesting. There are 6 free ebooks. It has a very robust supportive community forum, and this one is moderated by trained mentors, which makes it especially helpful. It also has free daily live classes, at least 2 every single day of the week, except for the weekends. It also has free weekly study groups, and I have actively participated in both of these, and I found them deeply enriching and helpful. This program, Primal Trust, it costs $96 a month or $960 annually. You can book a free 20-minute discovery call if you want to learn more. And again, it doesn't have any formal research studies. It claims to have benefited thousands of people. I personally have met probably hundreds of fellow participants who have experienced pretty remarkable progress. I haven't met anyone, with the exception of one person who probably wasn't in the right place, who didn't have at least some improvement. And for me, it was the blend of the top down, so the cognitive, and the bottom up, the somatic tools, that I found especially effective in getting into full remission. So this is the question: which one should I choose? Choosing between them will depend on your own unique health history and your goal for healing. Both of them are rooted in neuroplasticity, but they do differ in approach, depth, and focus. So if I were you, I would choose DNRS if your symptoms are mild to moderate and they're primarily physical. I would choose it if you have fewer symptoms, if you're not that sick. I'd choose it if you've had a shorter duration of illness. And by duration, I mean, probably if you've been sick for just 2 or 3 years. And I know that still seems like a really long time, but lots of people have been sick for 10, 15, 20 years, like myself. I would choose DNRS if I didn't have a significant trauma history, if I was looking for a highly structured cognitive program, if I was not interested in emotional exploration, if I prefer to work independently. And the last one is an important one: if time is a factor. DNRS is by far less time consuming. I would choose Primal Trust if you have significant anxiety, if you've got significant emotional dysregulation, you have a hard time processing or feeling emotions, or if your condition has been present for a long time, so maybe more than 2 or 3 years. I would choose Primal Trust if I had a lot of symptoms. If I had a history of trauma, I would absolutely choose Primal Trust. It will really help you heal a lot of your trauma, even without the help of a counselor. I would choose Primal Trust if I was seeking deeper emotional healing alongside of my physical recovery. Primal Trust is excellent if you're interested in personal growth, deeper self-awareness. It's also very good for ongoing support, as it does have that nurturing community. So if you're someone who's bedbound and you're isolated, like so many of us are when we have these conditions, Primal Trust is really valuable with its daily live classes where you can interact with others, and then with its study groups and its integrate classes once a week. And then the last reason for Primal Trust is I would choose it if I really thought I needed or wanted a top-down brain-based and a bottom-up body-based healing program. Primal Trust definitely offers a much more comprehensive program, but it does take more time. It's ideal if you're open to exploring the emotional layers of illness. So having done both programs, to summarize, I would say I did find DNRS incredibly helpful. It healed the majority of my physical symptoms. Later, I turned to Primal Trust for deep emotional work and sustained growth, which were essential for my long-term recovery. Both paths, though, are valid. For some, DNRS is completely enough. For others, Primal Trust offers a much more comprehensive healing environment. Just remember, you don't need to get perfect about this. You can always start with one. You can explore the other when you're ready. I would say the most important thing is that you choose one and start your neuroplasticity program. So, what does the day in the life of a brain retrainer like myself, and probably some of you, look like? I like to think of it like how someone with diabetes manages their blood sugar. So rather than monitoring blood sugar and taking insulin, we monitor our nervous system and we use our regulation tools. So for those of us healing from these complex chronic conditions, brain retraining is our daily medicine. It's how we help our nervous system stay regulated. It helps us stay out of symptoms and maintain remission. When I was very sick, I spent about 2 to 3 hours a day on brain retaining. You don't need to. A lot of people don't, but I did. Now that I'm healthy, I spend about an hour spread out in small pockets throughout the day, and I adjust as needed. So, for example, right now, going back to work just a few weeks ago, I have increased my tools probably to about an hour and 15, hour and a half a day. And here's what my typical day looks like. So in the morning, I do 20 minutes of breath work. I usually do the VU breath to start the day grounded. I do eye yoga after I eat my breakfast. I then do a visualization or a round practice for about 10 minutes. And then I tap for 2 to 10 minutes. At noon, I repeat the eye yoga. I do another round, I do another tapping, and then that's followed by meditation. And then before I go to sleep, I tap for a couple minutes. I do a quick round. I do a couple minutes of breath work. And then in bed, I'll do a 10-minute yoga nidra meditation. Several times throughout the day, I orient to the present moment. I also pattern interrupt if I'm triggered or ruminating by getting present with a breath or mantra for a minute or two. So these little pattern interrupts or orienting throughout the day, I would say are the most important thing you can do to regulate your nervous system by pausing throughout the day and just checking in with what am I feeling? How am I acting? What am I thinking about? Interrupting it, calming your system. It will go a really, really long way to calming that nervous system. Having said that, I still find it tricky to pattern interrupt. And sometimes I will set my alarm on the hour throughout the day just to remind myself to stop for even 30 seconds to take a breath. I also do somatic work every day, so I either walk, swim, or do yoga and try to really be in my body, feeling my body, because that's where we're going to find our safety. I also attend weekly Primal Trust classes. These are optional, but I find them really interesting and really helpful. I have a weekly study group meeting that I go to every Tuesday. And since I returned to work, I started working with a mentor monthly to help me with the transition. So some of these practices are tiny. Like I said, the pattern interrupt is just a minute here or there, but together they add up to a nervous system that feels pretty consistently supported and really keeps you out of your symptoms, keeps you in remission. So brain retraining, it's not a one-time fix. It's definitely a way of living. It's a brain retraining lifestyle, but you don't have to think it's going to be overwhelming or rigid. And I want you to remember when you start, you're going to hopefully start feeling better pretty quickly. So it's not like you're going to feel terrible the whole time you're doing it. Most people start to feel better as they're doing it. And over time, it just becomes second nature. It's just woven into your day. You know, it's just like brushing my teeth or having a cup of tea. I just do these exercises and it keeps me regulated and it keeps me healthy. So, as we've explored today, neuroplasticity offers real evidence-based hope for all of you living with these complex chronic conditions. By gently, consistently, daily retraining the brain and nervous system, we shift patterns of illness and we open the door to lasting recovery. And the most empowering thing is this, anybody can do neuroplasticity, and that does include you. So whether your journey has just begun or you're like me, you've been searching for answers for years before you found it, in neuroplasticity, these tools will meet you where you're at. They are totally adaptable and accessible. You can do them like I did from my bed, and they're grounded in the body's innate capacity to heal. For many, neuroplasticity has been the only approach that led to sustained remission. It's not just symptom management, but true remissions. So this is just a reminder slide. Just like building a muscle, healing happens through neuroplasticity by practicing every day, and you can do it. Your brain is capable of change, and that change will lead to deep healing. It's changed my life, it's changed the life of thousands of others, and it can change yours too. So if you can, it'd be great if you could start a neuroplasticity program. But if you can't, that's okay. You can start some of Dr. Rick's courses on his website on neuroplasticity. And in the near future, I'm hoping to lead some groups on neuroplasticity with a focus on guiding you through the different programs And I'd also like to have another group on helping people return to work. So I hope to see many of you there. So thank you so much for listening today. I hope that you felt you learned. And let me see if I can stop that share. Thank you so much for all the hearts. I'm going to put my video on. Hi, everybody. And I'm going to see if we have some questions. Okay, so the first question is saying they've been doing the Gupta, not sure if they're seeing a lot of progress. How does it compare to DNRS? I'm sorry, I really don't know the Gupta program. It is on my list of things to do. But they said, would you suggest trying DNRS or perhaps Primal Trust? I think I would suggest Primal Trust just because it is such a comprehensive program. And a few years ago, Dr. Kat King said a lot of people were coming to her program from DNRS. So I think a lot of people found what was lacking in the DNRS was the bottom-up approach, so the emotional and trauma healing. So for you, Maria, I would suggest the Primal Trust and maybe do that discovery call and see what you think. But yeah, I think that's what I would say. And I'm sorry I can't comment on the Gupta. All I know is about AI Ashtalk, which looked pretty incredible, but I don't know his program. Someone's asking, is there a link to the video recording? The video will be posted on Rick's website under ME YouTube TV. Okay. Someone's saying, how did I retrain for POTS specifically? Did I visualize myself with regular heartbeats, or did you just visualize overall good health? That's an excellent question. And I'm trying to remember because I had POTS back in 2019. So no, I did not visualize around POTS specifically, but that's an excellent question because when we retrain around other things, like for instance, I retrained around dizziness. Um, you will notice a lot of the things you're not retraining around will just start to fall away as well. So I think if you just do visualizations around, for me, I did a lot around running because I wanted to run again. And for me, that really seemed to be someone who was in really good health if I could run. So by visualizing being in good health, yes, it did result in healing my POTS. And I had very severe POTS actually. So I can say for sure the DNRS healed my POTS. Okay. So someone says we talk about healing, which is a dream goal. Why do we call it remission then? Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, I I don't think we quite know the answer to this quite yet in 2025, and I've talked about this with a few other people. So we call it remission because so far it seems to me, from what I've observed with myself and anyone else in remission, including, a lot of the mentors and Dr. Kat herself of Primal Trust, everyone seems to still be doing all their tools, just doing way less of them and more naturally incorporating them in their day. So, are there people who, with enough time out, get to that point where they don't have to do any tools? I don't know that answer. I actually haven't met anyone, but I can say I've met a lot of people who have gotten into remission who are, like me, happy to do the tools if it keeps me leading such a full life. So that's why we talk about remission right now, because I just don't think we're quite clear yet we probably need a few more years out about whether some people can actually drop all those tools and still be well. So someone says tips on how to integrate neuroplasticity into a daily routine. I'm struggling with this, keeping these practices up and falling off. So I think a really good way, and this is what I learned in Primal Trust actually, is having a daily structure sheet. So every day, even now, I still do this. Every morning, I write down my goals for the day, including my visualizations, my VU breath, my eye yoga, and then for me, because pattern interrupt has been one that I've had trouble with, that one I also have on my daily structure sheet. And then I just put a heart by each of them every time I do them. And so that keeps me on track, and I keep that notebook on my kitchen table. Every morning I do the list of what I'm going to do for the day and I go through it. And then at the end of the day, I also have two categories at the bottom, which I really like. One on the left is for wins. So I write all the wins of the day. And the second one is for gratitude. So I kind of bookmark my day with writing what I'm going to do, and then at the end of the day, sitting with how did I do and how did I feel about the day. So I think maybe just writing down a list of all the practices you're going to do for the day and trying to make it fun. That's why I do hearts. Might help you stay on the routine. So someone's saying they did the Gupta program and it helped the anxiety, but they're still bedbound. Should I try another program? Yeah, I think you should try another program, Gabriella. I would say I would go with the Primal Trust program. I know a lot of bedbound people that started in that and were able to get out of bed, so I would go to Primal Trust myself. Some people doubt they can heal because they've been sick for 20 to 30 years. Um, Could you speak to this, that the longer you are sick, the less hope there is for remission? Yeah, sure. So I was sick for sure for over 17 years. And I am not abnormal. Dr. Kat, who founded Primal Trust, was sick for 20 plus years, and she is definitely in remission, doing a lot of great things in life. So for sure, you can have some recovery and hopefully even remission, even if you've been sick for a long time. It just might take you a little bit more effort and a little bit more time. And the way I would think about it is if you think, so I live in Vancouver. I'm not sure where you are, Anna, but so we have a beautiful forest, the UBC forest, and it's really easy to walk along the well-worn paths that hundreds of thousands of people have walked along, including myself. So really, really easy to do that, and that's where you naturally go. So think of that as that's your chronic illness path right now that you're on. So easy to just stay on that. That's your brain likes efficiency and wants to stay on there. So when we're rewiring, at first it's going to seem hard. And I think of it like bushwhacking. So you're in the UBC forest, and instead of going on that well-worn path, now you're going to say, oh, I'd love to go check out that tree, but there's a thick, dense forest with ferns and bushes and trees, but I'm going to bushwhack my way through. And so that's going to take a lot more time, a lot more effort, and you're going to have to keep going down that path, down that path, down that path. But with time, hopefully you will get to the same sort of ease as you would have had with the initial path, if that makes sense. So absolutely, there are, I mean, I have met a woman who was sick for 40 years and she got into remission and moved to a tropical island. So there's lots of hope, I think, for people, even if it's been a long time. It just might take you a little bit more effort and a little bit more time to get there. Okay. Okay, so someone's saying they developed POTS after COVID, very common. And the anxiety is through the roof, very common, yeah. And will neuroplasticity really work? Yes, for sure. It works for POTS, and for anxiety, absolutely. Um, are cold showers okay? I think cold showers are great. And if you're interested in cold plunging, cold showers are the way to start. And then how do you know when you're ready for neuroplasticity? I'm hoping to start Primal Trust. I think if you're interested in it, start it now, but go in if you can with the mindset of, I'm really curious, I'm choosing to do this, I can't wait to learn about this. You really want to go in with curiosity because that will take the fear and the kind of fix it mentality, which is driving some of your symptoms. So yes, I think you could totally start Primal Trust, Lori. And what does the healing process look like? Well, it's different for everybody. Like I said, for me, it looked like Phoenix rising from the ashes. I was literally in my bed on home oxygen doing that course, and I literally a week later I took off that home oxygen. I said, I'm gonna go for a walk, and I walked a kilometer that first day after being bedbound for quite some time. So healing can look like that. It can also look a lot slower. It's totally different for everybody. Um, May I ask, what if you have blocks or subconscious issues but don't know what they are to work on? Excellent question, Lori. And if you're interested in that kind of work, then Primal Trust is for you. So, level two, we'll talk about identifying all those subconscious core beliefs, identifying all those parts of ourselves that are subconscious that are often driving the show. They're driving all those symptoms. So, Primal Trust will help you unblock the subconscious and really get to know yourself well and see where some of these symptoms are actually coming from. Before you became sick, did you have perfectionism? Yes. Poor boundaries? Yes. And how did those traits change through recovery? Excellent question, Jill. So yes, I was absolutely a perfectionist, times 100. Had terrible, I didn't have poor boundaries. I had zero boundaries. And through Primal Trust is where I really learned about myself. And I'll give you a real life example around perfectionism, which I thought was great for me today. So I was pretty nervous about this talk, haven't given talks for 30 years. And the old me would have furiously, after work today, oh, thanks for the hearts, would have run through my talk probably at least twice and gotten myself into such a state right before the talk. That was the old me. And I said, I'm not living like that anymore. My well-being comes first. And good enough is good enough. I'd already spent many, many hours on this talk. I'd already run through it several times. I said it does not need to be perfect. So the 2.5 hours I had after work, rather than furiously running through my program and, probably even changing a slide, instead, what did I do? I tapped. So I calmed my nervous system. I did a visualization. I did a visualization of myself doing well at this talk and hopefully really inspiring people. And then I did a little bit of breath work using the VU breath because I just love the VU breath. So yes, those traits have changed a lot and I'm really pleased that they have. Did I have major setbacks? Setbacks are definitely part of your recovery. It's not straight up. It's going to be forward, a little bit down, up and down, and then maybe around, and then up and down, and hopefully, but you're going in the right trajectory, but for sure you're going to have some setbacks, 100%. So I just kept doing it. Said, how did I navigate them? So I just kept doing my practices. So when you do a neuroplasticity program, you stop focusing on your symptoms. You stop thinking about doing it to fix your symptoms. You're doing it to regulate your nervous system. So you always try to keep that in your head. I'm just doing this to calm my system. And if you keep that at the foremost of your brain, then even when you have symptoms, yeah, it is challenging. And, I can't deny there have been times I've definitely freaked out from setbacks, but you just keep doing the program, keep staying engaged with, for me, the Primal Trust community, and you will keep seeing an upward trajectory. Did I see progress every week? For sure, I would say I was so ill when I started DNRS in 2019. I think I remember seeing progress every week. Like, I remember being pretty amazed at how quickly things were changing for me. Wondering, do I have cervical instability? Um, I don't know if I do. I suspect I might. Um, this person's been over, Natasha's been over a decade. Oh, a nurse, wonderful, and love to get in the ocean again. Just wondering if you worked with any people and helped if you had cervical instability. One thing I know Dr. Katz said, I don't know if you were there, Natasha, at the eye yoga, but she talks about the eye yoga helping with cervical instability. And I also think the Rosenberg exercise, which I didn't demonstrate to you guys, but you guys can look it up. It's pretty easy. That is supposed to help also, I think, with instability. So it's called Rosenberg exercise. Um, where did I acquire the biopsy for the mitochondrial myopathy? Um, yes, so I had that biopsy at the Mayo Clinic. And at the time, I was told I had a nuclear mutation, mito mitochondrial myopathy, and I was going to be fatigued for the rest of my life. But obviously, that's not true because I mean, now I can do everything. So, and is it related to the muscle biopsy that can be done for small fiber neuropathy? Or a separate procedure. That was a separate procedure. Yeah, and they were both very painful. Um, so this person's wondering about sleep. Um, so I don't know if you've done the cognitive behavioral therapy on insomnia, but I would recommend that. And there's even really great YouTube videos on CBTI. It's really helpful. The other thing you can do for sleep, and I think this has helped me, is really to have a good program before you go to bed. So I also had issues with sleep, and what I started doing, and this was on the recommendation of my mentor, was she said there must be some emotions driving your sleep being, poor. And so at night, I do that little sequence of things that I mentioned. So I do some breath work. I do VU breathing for anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes. I do tapping using the Tapping Solution app, which is a really helpful app. And then I do a visualization, and sometimes I do the visualization on the past when I used to sleep super well because I was a very good sleeper before. And then I do it on the future visualization, imagining having a wonderful sleep and waking up feeling so refreshed. So I think those are helpful, hopefully, maybe helpful things that might help you with your sleep. Why are medical doctors not recognizing these conditions? I have that same question, June. I don't know. Maybe Dr. Rick knows, but I don't know.
I call it I call it the Sherlock Holmes fallacy.
Mm,
Is that some of you may or may not know that Arthur Conan Doyle, who's the author of Sherlock Holmes books, was a doctor. And the premise of it is that if once you've ruled out everything, whatever is left over, no matter how unlikely, is the cause. The problem with that is that it assumes that you know all the possible causes. And for doctors, what's left over after they've ruled out everything else is psychological. And so even MS was considered a psychological disease until they created the MRI that could show it. So phantom limb was a psychological disease. Post-herpetic neuralgia was a psychological disease. Functional abdominal pain syndrome was a psychological disease. And so it's just history repeating itself. And those who don't know history are bound to repeat it. So, the one thing that I was completely wrong when I had my predictions in the first week of the pandemic, I said 10% are going to get a post-viral syndrome. It's going to be more common in patients who already have pre-existing. Patients with hypermobility are going to be more likely. And because we see so many patients at the same time, that we're going to develop legitimacy for these chronic conditions. Wrong. Patients are still as likely to be gaslit nowadays than they were before the pandemic. And so it's an uphill battle. Dr. McKay and I constantly do education. I think this province is much further ahead than anywhere else in the country, but it's an ongoing battle.
Yeah. Thanks, Rick. So how long did I do the Primal Trust program? I'm actually still doing it. I love it. And there are always new classes put on by Dr. Kat. And so I'll go, I think she has a lecture every 2 weeks. So I still go to her lectures and I still have my Primal Trust mentor. Yeah, so another question from Anna. Other practitioners have said these syndromes are not syndromes of damage, but dysfunction. I would agree with that. Many of us don't believe that due to needing so many clinical medical interventions, which are physical in nature. There are physiological changes in our bodies. Yeah. So if you, I don't know if you remember the domino slide that I showed. For sure, you're getting physical changes, but they're all being driven by the brain dysfunction. So, and there was also the slide talking about we can measure the dysfunction. There's no doubt there are physical changes happening, but we believe them now to be driven from neuroinflammation in the brain. And if we target that, we can target those symptoms. But having said that, absolutely take full advantage of, medications and other supportive therapies for those downstream effects so that you feel better and so that you can then do the neuroplasticity program, which is dealing with the root cause of the downstream effects. Um, Someone said, I noticed DNRS seems to help people who developed ME due to burnout. I wonder if it's as effective as those with a post-viral trigger. If you're talking about long COVID, Hillary, I think probably DNRS would be probably pretty good because chances are you haven't been sick for that long. And DNRS is a pretty straightforward, structured program. And like I said, I had really good improvement. The study, it's just one study, but still, I think it reflects how most people feel about the program. So yeah, I do think it would be probably work well for a post-viral trigger. Yeah, good question. Some of us have tried DNRS that much benefit. Why doesn't it work for some? I wish I knew that answer. I know. I can say though, I've personally met many people that had some success with DNRS or maybe none, but mostly some, and then they came to Primal Trust and then they had a lot more success. So I've always wondered if the DNRS, the limitation with DNRS is when you are caught in one of those ruminative stress states, you're supposed to just divert into gratitude and you actually repress emotions. And for me, this was a nightmare because I already was an emotional repressor and it just made me even more scared of my emotions. So it didn't treat the emotional trauma part of the illness. And I think that's why so many people who go from DNRS to Primal Trust have significant improvement. And I can definitely speak to, I was in a group of people, a study group at DNRS, and we all moved over to Primal Trust. And the most acutely ill person in our group, she was also bedbound. She also was able to get back to skiing and traveling and all these things, whereas she wasn't finding a huge benefit with DNRS. So I do think the second level of Primal Trust is especially good for the emotional trauma work, but the first level is super good for the somatic component that you just don't learn in DNRS. DNRS is just top down, just cognitive, and the Primal Trust is both top down and bottom up. So it's just way more comprehensive in giving you so many more tools to calm that nervous system. Can neuroplasticity help with chronic pain and cervicogenic headaches? I do believe it can. Yes, absolutely. For sure. Lots of people in the program have had chronic pain and migraines and other headaches and have completely healed. One of the mentors in Primal Trust shared her story with me. She's completely in remission, and she said this was an interesting story, a bit unusual, I think, but she said she had a headache every single day for many years, started Primal Trust, headache every single day for an entire year of retraining, and then it went away and it's never come back. And I thought, wow, that's dedication to keep going. But I think some of her other symptoms were also resolving along the way, which kept her motivated. But I thought that was interesting that she needed that full year to get to that point of recovery. And I would say for sure, neuroplasticity has helped me a lot with migraines and with chronic neck pain. Someone asked, can you get me as a doctor? I am working under Dr. Rick right now. And if anyone wants to have an assessment earlier and skip the line a little bit, you're more than welcome to let Bruno know. And I'm happy to see you. Thoughts on long COVID and how neuroplasticity would help. I think totally neuroplasticity helps long COVID because really it's, once you've tipped over 6 months, you're now in the chronic fatigue group. So absolutely would help you. And it's being shown. I know I have a very good friend actually who had long COVID and is now in remission using Primal Trust. So, and I've heard that from a lot of people. So absolutely neuroplasticity helps with long COVID. Um, what was my basic healing routine when I was, um, what was your basic healing when you were still when I was housebound? Yeah, so when I was housebound, I was doing the DNRS and I was primarily doing two of the five core pillars, which were rounds, so visualizations. And I was doing it for 2 hours. I was really motivated. I really wanted to get better and I really believed in the program. They recommend 1 hour, but I did too. For better or worse, I don't know. And then I also did what we call incremental training. So incremental training is where you pick a goal and you slowly work towards it using the round. So for me, I wanted to run. So I started with walking. So I would do a visualization future of me out walking with my family, having a nice time. And then I'd go out and walk. And then I'd come back and do another round to kind of cement in that memory that this is a safe thing for me to do. And it really worked. Someone asked about autoimmune disease. If you can reverse the autoimmune, there's no research on it. I can tell you I had an autoimmune disease um, in 2019, eosinophilic fasciitis. And it's gone now. So, and I have heard of other, and again, it's just anecdotally, so I'm not sure how much weight to put on it, but definitely I have heard other people healing their autoimmune diseases. So there probably is always hope to heal some of these other conditions. This is okay. So someone says if you discovered DNRS in 2018 and you're now doing your retraining with Rick, does that mean it took you 7 years of DNRS to be work ready? That is a very good question. Uh, no, it doesn't. I honestly, I started the DNRS, did I say 2018 or 2019? I can't remember, but um, I would say by a year, I felt really, really healthy. But the problem is I didn't trust myself not to get into trouble again with my perfectionism, with my overworking, with my lack of nervous system regulation, which I actually wasn't even aware of. But I just intuitively knew that work was going to be a problem for me. So I luckily, just by chance, came across Primal Trust in 2023. And once I came across that program, I was like, oh wow, okay, now I have the tools. Now I know I could go back to work. And I actually would have gone back to work then, but I got divorced that year. So, due to life circumstances, I had to take a pause on the return to work, and kept up my regulation processes as I processed through my divorce. So, I found personally the Primal Trust was so beneficial for getting through such a major life stressor. So no, it did not, it wouldn't have taken me 7 years if I had had better nervous system regulation through the Primal Trust and if I hadn't gotten divorced in 2023. Can eye yoga increase floaters or retinal tears? I haven't heard that. I don't know. I would say go very slowly if you're concerned or if you're noticing anything. Maybe get your eyes checked with an optometrist just to make sure everything's okay. But yeah, I don't know about that one. And someone's saying more remission from autoimmune disease. COVID turned on lupus for me. Do I think it could help? I don't think it would hurt. I mean, I personally think everyone in the world could use these nervous system regulation tools. I mean, most people walking around are dysregulated. So um, I would say absolutely try it. And, even if it reduces your nervous system activation enough to even just turn down some of your symptoms of lupus, because, all of these conditions are made worse by stress. Absolutely. So even if you can turn down that stress response, maybe you don't get into remission with lupus, but it probably will get better for you. Mhm. Okay, there was a question, someone wondering about some of the science, but saying they came in halfway, so you can look at the slides where I talk about the HPA axis and glial cell activation. Do I think Primal Trust is as effective as DNRS? I think it's better. Um, did you need did you need DNRS or Primal Trust coaches or small groups? Why are programs and coaches so expensive? Yeah, good question. I do find the coaches very expensive as well. And I had to really think about it before I got my own coach. But for me, um, I just knew it would help so much for returning to work to have a coach. But having said that, I did not have a coach before at this start of Primal Trust. So Primal Trust is so extensive with all of its daily live classes that anyone can join. It's integrate classes where they review the module. You can follow along each week. Um, and their forum is excellent. It's moderated by mentors who know what they're talking about. So I think if you were to get into Primal Trust, you actually probably don't need a coach, unless maybe you're going through a big transition like I am returning to work. Certainly coaches can help if you can afford it though. And then, as I was mentioning, again, I'm sorry I don't know about the Gupta program, but the AI Ash talk, he could be your coach. Like when I talked to him, it really made me pause and think, why wouldn't I just use AI Ash talk rather than spending, it's often 200 US dollars for a coach. He was excellent in his answers to me. And yeah, I think for that reason alone, the Gupta program might be worth checking it out if you're thinking about you want to coach as well. Someone's asking, as an FM patient, did I ever take any medications? Quite honestly, nothing was offered to me when I was really sick. I was sick back in the days when I was mostly being told it was in my head, or they didn't know what it was, or it was mitochondrial myopathy, or this autoimmune disease. Like I was getting all sorts of bizarre diagnoses. And no, I didn't get any medication. So everything I did was through neuroplasticity. Having said that, if you have access to medications and they're helping, I think it's awesome because, if you can treat those downstream symptoms, you're just going to feel so much better to treat the upstream um, driver, which is your brain with neuroplasticity. How does this impact a person who doesn't have a spleen? Would this make for higher chances of neuroinflammation? I really can't answer that question. Um, I don't know if Dr. Rick can answer that one.
I don't know any specific data, but to me, it sounds like it shouldn't make any difference at all.
Oh, yeah, okay. And then how to fix gut dysbiosis. So for me, the gut symptoms, I had very bad IBS and I didn't train around them. I had a lot of food sensitivities. I was so sensitive to alcohol that one time I ended up in the hospital after just one drink with a pericardial effusion. Like it just was really not the thing for me. But after brain retraining, I could drink again. I could eat gluten again, which I hadn't eaten for about 20 years. And I could eat dairy again. So even though I didn't train around it, just by calming my nervous system, by getting into nervous system regulation, my IBS resolved. Well, I would say my IBS went into remission. And that's got the asterisk. So anytime I'm stressed, like going back to work, I definitely have noticed my tummy's a little bit more upset these days. Why are a higher proportion who have these conditions are women? Well, I'm sure that question has many answers to it. Probably partly it's due to hormonal influences.
Well,
Looks like Dr.
there's
Yep.
actually data on that, and you
Okay.
can look it up. It's because women have two X chromosomes, and there's something called the lion hypothesis where one is supposed to be turned off. And so what happens is that some of that interaction between the two X chromosomes are thought to be at play. There's a huge article about that in
Hmm.
Science magazine.
Excellent. And I would say from more of the psychological, emotional, social aspect, I think, and this is from Primal Trust, I think it's just women have been taught to self-abandon and not to put our needs first. So I do think that's a huge part of it too, myself, honestly. And if you do primal trust as a woman, you will learn to stop doing that. So how can these methods help with still ongoing stressful threats, especially COVID? Yeah, yeah. And also help like things like climate catastrophe. Yeah, so these methods, they don't change the stressful threats, but they change your response to them. So that's really important. So, you know, take COVID, for example, like I'm no longer high alert about COVID. I don't want it. When I last had it, I had it for 3 months and that was not fun. But having said that, my response, because I'm regulated, is very different. I do the things to protect myself, but I am not in a high alert state around it. And it's the same about climate catastrophe. It's even about being around stressful people. Like, I now notice my reaction around stressful people is very different. I'm very much able to just kind of step back and not get caught up in the stressful energy of a person or situation. So that's how these methods help. And like I said, I think they would help everybody in the world truly. So someone's been practicing eye yoga, wonderful, but it's triggering headaches, nausea, dizziness. And any suggestions, should I do less? Yes. So for sure, still do a few times a week. Well, I would start, I don't know how much you're doing, Rika. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. But I would start with maybe just like one. And just, I'm not sure where you're at, but maybe just like one, 3 times a week. And then if that's fine, then maybe, another no every day and just go really, really slowly. And like I said, I for a while was up to 10 reps 3 times a day, but with the added stress of returning to work, I found I've had to drop down to about 3 to 4 reps 2 to 3 times a day. So they're really powerful. And just I would say you're probably just being a little bit too enthusiastic, but that's great that you're doing them.
I'm
Yes, the
afraid,
yoga webinar will be posted, and Bruno is going to be sending out the slides to everybody.
I'm afraid we're out of time.
Oh,
How many questions have you left unanswered, Liz?
oh my goodness. I don't know. I mean, it says open 254.
So maybe what we can do is we can book another session for you with no presentation and just a Q&A.
Sure. Yeah, it looks like I'm only maybe about a third of the way down.
Yeah, so let's do that.
Okay.
So if you haven't had your question answered, we'll book another session.
Yeah,
Uh,
that'd be my pleasure.
and then what I'm hoping is that at some point that we're going to have coaching sessions built into our practice.
Yeah, I mentioned that to everyone that I want to lead a coaching session and have people going through the programs if they can, but if they can't, that's fine. And then I want to do another coaching session through your practice on returning to work because returning to work is a huge transition and it would really help people to have someone coach them through it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Liz. Another great presentation.
Oh, thanks, Rick, and thank you everybody for listening and thanks for all the lovely hearts. I look forward to speaking soon.